One of the things you recently told me that I keep quoting is that buildings are no longer a static asset. They are part of your stock price. Can you talk about what you're seeing and what that means for the people in this room?
I think a few years ago when people look at a building, they look the building as a liability and they spread it. And when you talk with them, they always, oh, I want to pay back as soon as possible. When I have a work with a manufacturing company, for example, they asked me like, oh, I want to pay back 2 years. I told him like, 2 years is mean 50% payback. It's much more than in a stock market. That time he said like, oh, the stock market currently 50%. That's around 2021 when the stock market really well. But I explained to him like, he's a financial guy, so he's kind of easy to explain. Historically, SP 500 is only get you 10%. So getting 8 years payback is already 12%. So sometimes you need to explain that way in order to achieve the energy efficient, low carbon in your building. But recently with the change of regulation and the push of decarbonization in ESG, people start changing their behavior. Our client just coming to us like, with a high-rise building and mid-rise building, I want a net zero. Like net zero with all high-rise building, that's very difficult for us, for engineers. So that's kind of behavior that changed. They not only want a net zero, but at least if you cannot deliver net zero, please give me like a track to get the net zero for the building. And also the ESG is affecting the overall, their stock price, right? So that's not the static component anymore. They want to be in the top of ESG ranking because like if you put your 401k in Fidelity, Vanguard, you can buy a fund that have a ESG fund on that, which is, I just checked before I make a presentation, it's performed really pretty well. Comparing with the SP 500 is comparable. I think they're slightly higher, but it's pretty much comparable with the SP 500.
When you work with owners who are doing this work, I feel like everyone in this room owns a building, thinks about buildings, they're looking at their buildings and maybe their scope 3 emissions. I feel like that's where this conversation really comes into play. So what do owners need to be aware of as they begin to transform their building stock to net zero energy and carbon? Who needs to be involved in this and how does that work actually happen?
I think it's during the process, I usually split the process into 4 buckets. The first one is the awareness, where the owner understands the requirement, the push of the customer, the regulation. That's the awareness level. Mostly your client probably in the test bucket. The second bucket is reporting or baselining, which is they usually do a sustainability report or a climate action plan or something like that. That's the second bucket. Most of your clients probably already sit on that one. On that side, usually we talk about dealing with the reporting, maybe engineer, facility manager that you need to bring on that stage. The third stage, which is planning and budgeting, that's a very critical piece of achieving a net zero. In that one, I think this is my first time in my life in working in a built environment. We work with actually a management consulting company like EY or similar type of a consulting company, and also like a tax consulting company, which is not common for me working with a tax consulting company or partnering, looking how to make a net zero. So we make a planning because it's the important piece to achieve a net zero. Otherwise, your reporting will be straight like this. People just put, oh, I want this and straight, right? But in reality, it's not. You will be zigzagging a little bit in the process to get a net zero. And the fourth piece is implementation. That kind of like you need to partnering maybe with a procurement person. We work with a university project that we implementing decarbonization with a P3 contract style. So how you work with a different type of contract, how you arrange your financing in the next 30 years or 25 years, depending on your goal. But I think it's slightly different with a typical construction, which is, for me, it's like a sprint, or it's like 2 years project, right? Finish. But the carbonization in a building stock in a corporate can take like 20, 30 years. It's more like a marathon. So you have to make sure you achieve each goal in each year to achieve your final goal in the the goal that you selected.
Okay, so I know we have a lot of existing buildings, and we're talking a lot about how to decarbonize existing building stock. How does that work? How is that work different than if you just have a new construction? Like, who are the stakeholders that get involved in those types of conversations?
I think for the new building is pretty much straightforward. I think with the government, I think throwing $1 billion to push the energy code to be closer to net zero. So to be a net zero is, I think my experience 3 years ago, going to net zero ready or have almost there, to be net zero is about 2-3% premium cost. But for the existing building is very complicated. I think somebody mentioned about the performance that already degrade. Sometimes the maintenance is not good. So data collection and digitalization of the building is become important, because you need to collect the information and make sure that what strategy that you can implement. And if you have a big chunk of building, 100 building, you need to select the building each year in order to achieve the goal, right? For example, this building have a high carbon usage, but only 100 square feet. So it doesn't really matter. Whatever you do in there is not even make a dent in your overall carbon emissions. So that's kind of like between a facility manager, how you collect the data. I think always the data is the missing piece. We go to university, oh, I have a data. We go there like a lot of messy data that we have.
Okay, so what advice would you give to people in this room who are thinking, I want to go to net zero energy or net zero carbon? How do I start this work?
I think it's making a proper planning. It's like staging your planning to next 30 years. It's not easy thing. People just usually doing, oh, let's do a reporting every year. And if you get lucky, you get a net zero, right? It doesn't work like that. You need to really staging it properly if you have a big portfolio, especially if like either you get 50 building or 100 building. You need to strategize carefully, because you don't want to spend the money in a day one, right? First, you still need to use your building. Your staging is not only about the money, but how you use building, right? You cannot just renovate whole of your building in 1 year, right? That's the way that you want to achieve the goal. And also the strategize the pricing, also the tax incentive, because tax incentive sometimes not going through until 2050, so 2030. How you put the money is you looking at so many different factors. The existing equipment also. You don't want to replace, even though it's not probably the best equipment in the market right now and you need to be replaced, but it was installed maybe 2 years ago. It's not good also if you talking today is like circular economy. You just install it. It still have a long lifespan. You don't want to replace it. So looking the holistic approach of decarbonization is very important.
Okay, and I've heard you say a couple times that data is key here, that first you've got to measure it.
Yeah.
So how do you get good data?
I think it's challenging in one thing. I think even for new building, we don't have a good rate of success, because it's not something that important before, right? Because I think a few years ago when you talk, oh, I want a data, the dashboard costs $20,000. My energy usage every year is only $40,000. Doesn't make sense. Even I don't do really smart thing, I will not exceed 50%, right? Kind of thing like that, what's happened before. So now, putting a proper metering, what kind of data collection that you need, not only for energy data, but how you collect the overall ESG goal, for example. What is your intention of the data? In one of project, we have all the metering and everything. We come to the metering guy, I want this data. No, we cannot give you. We don't have that one. I have the raw data. So finally we do like Excel spreading to change it, because what the data that they give is not really match what we want to achieve. So I think understanding what you need in a building need to be informed, because these kind of people who work on this data collection before maybe focus on facility management, maintenance, operation of the building, which is sometimes for us, we focus more like performance, carbon goal, net zero goal, and decarbonization.
But who are the like unsung heroes in this work?
I think it's many facility manager is the unsung hero for me. It's like they sometimes know the building in and out, and even they know, oh, there is a problem. But unfortunately, sometimes they don't get a good support from the financing in order to make a building better.
Yeah.
But I think some of them really understand the building in order to maybe decarbonize understanding and working with the maintenance people. That's a really important key.
One of the things I hear, I mean, we're all talking about AI like right now, and a lot of us want to do this work quicker, faster. How do you work with people who have a portfolio of buildings, who want to collect a lot of data and use that to implement this work really quickly?
We do a combination in our firm. We have a kind of like a tools that make a planning for the staging for the corporate to make at least a financing option. But when we go to a green build also, we say that they pretty much go into the detail of the process. So kind of like you need to get approval from your CFO first, right? That is an important piece. I mean, like the money guy, like you need to get approval before you can implement that one. So that kind of like high level things, working with the tax consulting to align the goal, looking the holistic approach of your company. There's a lot of tax incentive in now that you can achieve. Like there is a 179D, there is a PV incentive and kind of stuff that you probably want to take a look and before you achieve the goal of the.
Okay. What is coming up next in this sector that people should be aware of now to get ahead of this work?
What is next? I think people start looking the carbon, right? And people start doing what is LCA, right? Whole building life cycle assessment. If you take a look, actually, whole building life cycle assessment consists of six goals, right? Now people only take a look at the carbon only. So people start looking those calculations and say like, this is not the right way. I mean, like if you do LCA, you only count for 60 years. So they all make assumption in 60 years, all your building will be demolished, which is supposedly not, right? I mean, like a building can stay longer than 60 years. So people start looking like a circular economy, like what we discussed today, like a cradle in the building. And another thing also that we take a look more important is a nature-based solution. We have a discussion in AIA when we take a look, people start proposing maybe biomimicry coming again. It was popular before, right? It's a cycle. Biomimicry, biophilia are popular. But I think there are suggestions we should start looking at nature-based solution in a project, which is looking at circular economy, also the holistic approach in a building. Regenerative design is part of that one. One is the nature-based design can address the need of decarbonization and also the need of the equity, which is social aspect of that one. Also the resiliency aspect of that in the holistic of design as well as a material. So kind of like those, I think, is become next KG phrase that coming. Just met with a representative from Canada. This one is like not intentionally. My job title have a nature-based, but it was actually before it was. And he saw my job title. Like, oh, nature-based. Oh, in our government we want to take a look nature-based design solution. No, it's not on. So they start stepping out and looking more holistic approach on the design and how to make more regenerative design, how make it a better impact on the building. Like somebody mentioned, how we not only zero, but have a positive impact, right? Yesterday I have a conversation before fly here, I think 30 minutes before fly here with a professor in Singapore. Basically, he can collect water from relative humidity. If you have a relative humidity very high in your room, it's not only dehumidify, but he will produce potable water. Basically, it's cleaner than tap water, he said, like, because he put a goldfish in there and alive, and after that he changed to the tap water and the goldfish die. So that's the thing. That's how you make a positive impact on your built environment.
Okay. What is one takeaway you'd like this audience to know as they start this journey?
I think it's looking more like a holistic in a global impact, and don't be afraid to push innovation in a building. I think there is somebody mentioned there's a energy code, or we need to follow code. Code is a minimum standard, right? Yeah, I understand. Even the minimum standard, people sometimes forget to do it, right? So, but we need to have a way to push the client to understand the holistic picture of that. So, like what I mentioned to you, like example how our discussion with the financial guy about payback, right? If your client just say 2 years is 50%, that's very high. So kind of like that kind of stuff, and they start thinking, and hopefully they can embrace it. I think that's an important thing. And also now it's a thing, your government has a funding that can push to add in your project to make it a net zero. So definitely don't be afraid to push even further in your design in order to achieve the greater goal.
And they can always come find you.
Yeah.